Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's edition of HR Mentorship Learning Series. My name is Oluyemi Adeosun, and we'll be looking at a topic, talent acquisition, how to build employer branding to attract highly skilled Gen Z and Gen Alpha workforce. Our facilitator is one of our regular, consistent facilitators on this platform. His name is Victor Agu, and is an HR professional whose experience spans industries including FMCG, manufacturing, hospitality, finance, fashion, real estate, and consulting. He is a chartered HR practitioner and associate member of Nigerian Institute of Management. He's also certified in project management and holds a PMP from the American Academy of Project Management. It's interesting to note that he also used to be an accountant. He has held positions that saw him overseeing HR in countries including Nairobi, Kenya, Freetown, Sierra Leone, and Juba, South Sudan. Ladies and gentlemen, he practices currently as an HR project leader and analyst, providing services for government, private sector, respectively. He has embraced technology by learning how to blend HR with data science, using advanced tools, visualizing, transforming data, and so on and so forth. He's a graduate of economics from the prestigious Obafemi Awolowo University and is also enrolled as a postgraduate student in Lagos State University, where he's running his MBA. He's a graduate of Stella Obialo Executive Training Academy and a current member of the HR Mentorship Academy faculty. Ladies and gentlemen, Victor Agu is a professional speaker, trainer, and writer. He has published articles. In addition to his published articles, is the author of 4 books, including HR in Brief, How to Land a Job Within 90 Days, and so on and so forth. He plays the music at a near advanced level. Of course, he loves music. Ladies and gentlemen, speaking to us today on the topic, how to attract Gen Z and Gen Alpha to your organization and help them to succeed. Of course, that's not, I've paraphrased the title. Please let's welcome Victor Agu. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adeosun. It feels so good to be here. Thank you very much for building us up. And for those who are joining us here, thank you very much for joining this meeting. I feel very privileged to be here. This is about my 6th webinar, 5th or 6th, thereabout at HR Mentorship. And it's just been an amazing affair. So this evening, we will be looking at this topic. Interestingly, a couple of days ago, somebody spoke to us about Gen Zs, and we had a lot of learning around this particular, let's just say this peculiar set of workforce. And we'll just be looking at how do we bring in building our workplace structures, how do we align our work environment such that it suits the typical delicate Gen Zs. And most times when we hear Gen Zs, we begin to want to talk about mental health, those kind of conversations. But these are things that we will be looking at discussing in the very short time that we have at our disposal. Usually, usually when I learning theories and all, I like to, check, put in a lot of stories. So in between, I'll be keeping in 1 or 2 experiences. I am a millennial myself, but then being a millennial, I'm at the boundary. So I'm not very, very far from the Gen Z generation. And some of the things that we can observe from Gen Zs, and Gen Alphas, there are things that are relatable. Yeah. So one of the things, just before we go on, one of the things I would just want to say in the chat box, right? Again, not compulsory, but I would like to see, maybe just how many Gen Zs are here, maybe Gen Zs are millennials. We can just do a little pop-up. If you are a Gen Z or you're a millennial, just hype up your generation. I've mentioned that I'm a millennial myself, and then we can just take up our conversation from there. So I will be looking at the chat box, and I hope that one or two persons will just respond. If not, we'll just assume that everybody here, they are maybe some other generation. However, this conversation is also very important because we are trying to see how to model our HR practice. We're trying to see how. Thank you very much. I'm a millennial. Thank you so much, Sandy. Should I say up millennials to us? All right, thank you very much. So we are trying to see how we can pattern our workplace to bring in these different generational divides. And this evening we'll be looking at employer branding. We are going to look at the footprints for Gen Zs and Gen Alphas. We are going to see what transparency would mean to us, how to build employer branding, and then we'll just take questions and answers. Right. And by the end of today, we should be able to understand key things around employer branding. We want to see what strategies we can put together. We want to see what work preferences, what are the things that can work, and what are the things that may not work. So interestingly, Happy Children's Day to, I can't say Happy Children's Day to all of us, but somebody has argued that everybody is literally maybe a child or baby to somebody at any point in time. It was a very, very, very interesting experience for me at work today. As my boss just declared, just said, you know what, today is Children's Day. And then he actually ordered food from one of these eateries around, and everybody had a very, very, very spicy meal this afternoon, just around work. And I'm saying this because somehow I'm going to tie this down into some of our discussions. Trust me, there's some persons that it unlocks the inner child in them. And you see, it was not as if, rice was the problem, but everybody just got a little bit giddy. Levels for work just went up. Everybody was just excited. And it was just like, today is Children's Day, we are at work, but then this means a lot to us, right? And we are just going to see how important that was for us. Of course, we have a couple of Gen Zs around us, but then we have people who are millennials, we have those who are older. And it was just interesting to know that a plate of rice could do a little bit of magic. All right. That being said, let's quickly look at talent acquisition. And I want to just borrow 30 seconds, please. I feel a little bit of cold, so I just want to turn off. Something making me very, very cold. So in 30 seconds, I'm back, please. Okay, thank you very much. Now I feel better and I can flow. Yeah, so talent acquisition, it's important to understand that talent acquisition is not the same thing as recruitment, right? While recruitment is our day-to-day, you have a role that is open, you want to fill it up as quickly as possible. It's important to know that talent acquisition in itself is strategic. And what are you trying to do when you are trying to acquire talent? Basically, you want to identify, you want to attract, you want to get quality people, right? And your focus is on the long term, right? So if I'm a business leader, I'm an HR person, my focus is on the long term. And what am I trying to do? I just want to build a talent pipeline. I want to be sure that I have people who are around the system and they can take me to the next level, right? So talent acquisition is a strategy. You can want to say, oh, of course, you can have recruitment strategies, but we look at talent acquisition from the long-term perspective, right? And you are trying to see how to meet the present needs of the business and then the future needs of the business. So one of the things that we must quickly understand would be who are these guys? Who are these guys that we call Gen Zs? Who are the Gen Alphas? Literally, people who are within the 1997, right, 2012 band. Sometimes when you read some literature, some persons relax these rules a little bit, but within these boundaries, you want to classify them as Gen Zs. And those who are born from 2010 onwards, you want to say these guys are Gen Alpha. So let's quickly look at some of the things that are peculiar to these persons, right? And I've worked with several persons. I am not, like I mentioned, I'm a millennial myself, and the span of my career has been a little under 10 years, a little under 10 years. And within 10 years, I've probably worked in about 6 organizations, right? 5, 6 organizations within shortly or a little bit below 10 years. And one of the questions that I get when I go to interviews would be, why are you going from one place to another? Why have you not stayed so long in a place? And I then have to start explaining, for instance, a little bit about me. I started my career in the consulting space. And, when you work in the consulting space, one of the things that you do for people is recruitment. And then there was a need for a particular role, and I was told to go and handle the role. So you then begin to go and explain, and then after there, you spend 1 or 2 years, you go to another place, you spend another 2 years, you go to another place, that kind of a thing. So if I have not spent, if my career span has not gone above 10 years, how is it that I've worked in at least 5 places? That would just mean that I've probably not been in any place that's been more than, I think my highest span within any organization till date has been about 2 years. So while that comes as a little turn off to some persons are really interested. What does that mean? Does that mean that when it's time to leave a place, it's as if somebody called me restless one day? Another person asked me if I usually get bored. If I'm on a particular role, I'll just get bored and I'll feel like, it's time to leave. While I'm not a Gen Z, I can outline the issue around loyalty and long term. Loyalty and long term. You find out that this generation, they do not want to compromise certain things. For instance, they wouldn't take a compromise for a workplace that does not fit into their values and align with their goals. I think it was last year around April, I did a webinar here too when I was talking about aligning organizational goals with personal ambitions. And you find out that you have people who they want to do stuff, they want to be happy, they want to, they just want to do their things. And if we have a system where your workplace, your workforce, your strategies, and all that, it looks like they are going to be hampered. They are just not going to stay, right? This is a generation that will not compromise the workplace for their values, their goals. They would not compromise, right? So, like I've expressed here, it's becoming very necessary for organizations to adapt and find ways of working with them, right? We've had webinar series where we've talked about, the things that are not very, very exciting about this generation. There was one, again, because I'm currently in consulting, I've been privileged to sit across a couple of interview panels from from entry levels to the position of directors, and you see a lot of things. Very recently, I think that was 2 weeks ago, we're recruiting for a particular role, and the person who was one of our partners who was spearheading this particular interview process by every means possible, right? This person should not be less than 50 years old, right? Somebody who has seen it all in career and all that. And there was this young girl, probably 22 or 23, smart young girl. She came on Zoom. We're having a Zoom interview, and then you know, just as we are here, I can literally see from the chat box, I can see Innocent, I can see Amos Precious, I can see Eniola, just like any other person, right? And the girl just came on board and she's like, "Hi Femi, hi Femi, how are you today? Hi Femi." Even me that I'm inside the organization, you know, I know in some places, and I know in some places they say do first name, awesome, beautiful, no issues with that, right? I remember one of the times Dr. Adeosun would say that some of those places that have those policies, they do it internally. If they go outside, you probably not see somebody who is almost your daddy, and you're just like, "Hi," you know. So it already created an impression. Even when she came and she was just trying to do all of us were just wondering, including Daddy Femi, the way she was just. So at some point we had to say, you know what? No, this they just come and are like, Femi. But some of us were just wondering if this person were to be your daddy's friend or stuff, will you just see him on the road and you'll be like, "Hi, Femi," or stuff like that? But then we understand that, I mean, it's just what it is, right? So they want to pressure organizations to create a better world of work, right? And of course, Gen Alphas are also following suit, right? These guys are digitally native, right? They consume information through social media, IG, TikTok. I wouldn't say Facebook. There's some persons who argue that Facebook is not one of the trending social medias for the younger generations. But then there's a whole lot of information consumption, and we want to understand what is it that motivates these guys, right? Please see this as us laying foundations, right? We will build on this, and then we'll now begin to talk about what strategies can we begin to put into place. Okay, I see somebody saying he or she. Okay, hybrid jerseys. Okay, let's quickly look at employer branding because this is the crux of the matter. Thank you very much, TKI, for your response. This is the crux of the matter, right? What is employer branding? Again, this is another strategy where the focus is on shaping. Please take note that when we say employer branding, we are not only talking about those who are outside the organization. We're also talking about those who are inside the organization. How do they perceive the company, right? I usually ask this question to some of my friends. So anytime where I work somewhere, I try to ask the staff, can you recommend this company to your friend, right? Can you recommend this company to your family member as a place that you can work? And I like to do this survey most times when I do trainings or I do stuff. I want to ask. So again, for those of us that are on this call, right, where you currently work at, either you are HR or you are not HR, can you anonymously say, right, if you can recommend, right, if you can recommend this place as, so I'm your friend, I'm your brother, I'm your sister, where you currently work, yeah. So if you want to answer yes, if you want to answer no, if you want to answer indifferent, I would just like to see some things going on in the chat box, and then we'll try and look at the statistics for what are different organizations, the cultures, and things that we practice. Thank you so much. This is very encouraging. You see, the no that is coming from one of us has like 4 O's, right? So there's a no. Let's keep this coming. The question is never. I mean, so this is not just a no, this is even a never. It tells you that certain things are not right. So it really doesn't matter if the persons who are talking are Gen Zs or they are not Gen Zs or they are millennials, but it just tells you that yeah, these are conversations that we need to have, right? I would really be pleased if I see maybe at least 5 yeses, if there's any word like that. But then let's keep this coming. Thank you very much, Ejiro. I see yes. I'm waiting to see 1 or 2 indifferents, right? Depending on the circumstance of the applicant, right? That's an indifferent. Thank you so much for that response. So it just tells you that there is a perception, right? There's a perception, whether I'm inside the organization, whether I'm outside the organization. And like I said, right, career span less than shortly, I think I should be a decade, maybe in a year or 2, but then 5 organizations. Can I say yes to all organizations? Definitely not. Some I'll say yes, some I'll say no to. But it is very important as HR people that we should position our organizations in such a way that there should be a perception right? Positive, if we are able to, right, that would be very, very nice. And what would this have? What would this mean to us? It would improve our recruitment and retention efforts, right? You don't want your best guys leaving. I was telling to somebody today while we were just having a conversation. I'm like, I don't exactly like, of all the different functional areas within HR, recruitment is, I do recruitment every day, right? But it's not one of my favorites. I think it's a little bit stressful, just a subjective opinion, even though I get to do it, right? There's been times when I spent a lot of effort trying to get the best hire, but at the end of the day, man, I just discovered that we wasted a lot of time. There are times when we put in all the effort to getting the brightest candidate. We just posted something on LinkedIn. The person also used the keyword, and then the person came on board, and the person was just doing exploits, right? When you ask the person about his experience, the person is having a nice time, and I'm like, by all means possible, now that we have seen this person that is speaking our language, we don't want this person to go. So what are the things that we should put in place? All right. And so when we talk about talent acquisition, we want to see how to attract the best guys, right? We want to reduce recruitment costs. If it is possible for me to have instant referral, right? If it is possible for me to post something here, the best guys are applying, I'm recruiting them, they are coming on board, everything is just ticking, right? People who come in, they have a little bit of stability, right? Emotional stability, they are able to just get the job done, right? So just going on, there are three key elements I want us to quickly consider before we dig deep, right? First of all, EVP, right? Employer value proposition. What does the company offer specifically to this generation? So I put it to every one of us that the Gen Zs and Gen Alphas, right? There is the loyalty factor. There's the loyalty factor. This is a generation that will not care so much around loyalty, right? They want to get the job done. They just want to be happy. So, loyalty sometimes, and sorry to use this example, but sometimes in families, when you talk about loyalty, maybe in marriages or so, or instances like that, loyalty does not mean, happiness does not mean everything is fine. Sometimes you just want to create your own happiness because you are loyal. Do you understand? I can be loyal to somebody. Sometimes I'm very happy, sometimes I'm not happy, but then I am loyal, right? But this generation, I wouldn't want to say loyalty problem, but loyalty is a major factor, right? And then you want to talk about long-term purpose, the long-term purpose, right? If I stay here for 5 years, what is in it for me? What can I really, really become? Right. So when you are building your value proposition, I feel like managers, HR professionals, owners of businesses, we should have statements, right? Just because I don't want to mention the names of organizations, but very, very standardized workplaces, you have these things as statements. The way you have your vision statement, your mission statement, and all that, you want to have your value proposition, right? And for this generation, whatsoever we are going to be building this around should have a soft landing or should have a foundation on training and mentorship. So I'm not going to talk so much about training and mentorship right now, but I'll talk about that later. But let's just hold that at maybe our left hand, right? Training and mentorship, because you have people who maybe they are very good, but they have an attitude problem. Maybe they are very good, but they have a communication problem, right? And how do we begin to, sometimes it's even character, right? I mentioned the person who came to an interview, some person, and it's like, if you left her that day, after saying, Femi, what's up? Maybe she'll just do something else. So we want to look at training and mentorship much later. But of course, what's the company culture, right? What's the company culture? And how much time are we going to spend building, reinforcing the values, the beliefs, right? And the behaviors that define the workplace, and how can this be in alignment with what these guys want? All right. So outside the experience, right? Experience, satisfaction. So Gen Zs and Alphas will focus more on their overall satisfaction, right? Other than actual work, right? Work is good, work is beautiful, but what is my experience on the job? What satisfaction am I deriving? Somebody can these guys can probably run 2 or 3 jobs at the same time, right? They just know that there are options that are available to them, and so our strategies should give employees a certain level of experience, a certain level of, oh, you know what, I'm enjoying this job, this is something for me to remember. All right, so let's just look at their footprint, right? What are the dominant platforms? What are the things that this generation will care about? So we see, TikTok, Instagram. We see that a significant portion of this generation would spend a lot of time just trying to, imbibe any form of entertainment. And we see that there's a whole lot of talk around influencer marketing, right? And we see this generation, oh, that thing is trending, this particular person is talking about this particular thing, oh, they are influencing this. How do we bring this, into our workplace? So you see some environments where they have a solid social media team, for instance, and then they are making videos, they are having a lot of fun, and then you see that they are even trying to bring in the older generations. And you see some persons come, maybe your social media manager, for instance, is a 25-year-old guy or girl, and they're like, come and make a video for us, right? HR, smile for the camera, HR, that kind of thing where you are trying to create an all-inclusive, so everybody is just showing up, everybody is, it's like we are part of the fun, we are part of the media, right? Whatever we are trying to do. And I'm sure that some of us that we've been on TikTok, we've been on Instagram, and we see some trends. We see that even HR teams are jumping on trends. There was one time on Instagram also, I think I saw Salary Week, how some persons were treating their HR. And then you see that different organizations or different persons start jumping on things like this, right? So you have a social media person, apart from the fact that the person is probably managing your website or doing stuff like that, we have things around trend. How are we jumping? How are we hopping on trends, right? How are we bringing our work to enter into whatever trend, whatever is trending? And Nigeria is such a trend-focused landscape where you find out that something is trending and it trends for like 2 weeks, it trends for 3 weeks, and then you just discover that people are aligning themselves to the trend. For those of us that use social media a lot, you discover that a particular sound, right, one particular sound, you will see people recreating thousands of videos, right, hundreds and thousands of videos on a particular sound, and then it goes on for weeks and weeks. So we have a social media team, for instance. How are we advising these guys to jump on trends that some of us may not know? So there was one, I think there was one meeting like that I attended, and somebody was trying to talk about one particular glitch. It's like how some of these cliches that we use, I don't know, maybe we should go back to the chat section, right? Somebody should give us an example of a particular trend, something that they say, and then it's just trending everywhere. Can anybody give us that? Let me see if our guys are even on this call. Right. So I just want to make an illustration out of that. Any trending word, any trending phrase, any trending thing, as much. So back to my story, and I'll come back to use that, right? Somebody was saying that within the office, and the older generations just couldn't relate, right? Just couldn't relate. And like, what are you talking about? Sometimes it's within the way it's within the way they type, right? It's within the way they express something. And I'm still not seeing any trending word, any trending kind of thing. The same way you do BRB, be right back, or stuff like that. right? So it was just, everybody was just lost. And it seemed that this person was in his own lane. This person was in his own world. And it was just not nice. It was just not nice. So we want to see how that, social media is just something that is not averse to the workplace. Social media is just not something that we are not able to relate with, right? So they are saying something, we are not able to relate. HR is not able to relate. People within the office that are not within that generational divide, they are not able to relate. It's something that we should work around. Same thing for the alpha workforce. These guys are after 2010, right? Video content, things that are interactive gaming platform, digital natives, same thing with social media. And so there is a whole lot on relying on digitization, right? Digitization, zero paperwork, Google Form. Recently, we did some performance appraisal templates for an organization that was not using an HR software, and we use Google Forms to do a whole lot of things. And we're like, sometimes you can just hold your phone and do all that you want to do, right? Having to make people understand that you want to fill a PDF form, right? You want to fill a form, you want to do stuff like that. You do not necessarily have to print out the paper, then write and fill the form and all, right? There are Adobe suites that you can use to do all of these things. Things like Canva, right? A lot of interactive tools where you just want to see that within the organization, right? Things are moving from here to there. Everybody is within. So there's this clamor for technology. It means that in your day-to-day HR processes or in your day-to-day working around initiatives and strategies and all, there has to be the infusion of technology, just some way, somehow. So the part of HR, for instance, that interests me is, that part of HR that will deal with, technical tools, projects, analytics, and stuff like that. Because when you get into that world, you discover that, some things can be done very, very fast. Some things you can just do some things sharply. Some things you can carry a lot of persons, on board. It means that when you are working with a remote team, you can still do your HR processes, and you can definitely do your operations very well, even when everybody is not on site, right? Employee engagement initiatives. You are doing things that, everybody is just at par with, so that there is a form of balance. So I remember there was one time where I was interviewing for a particular job, right? And they told me before the recruitment process that 70% of those who are working there, they are of the younger generation, Gen Zs, and all that. And what what initiatives would you be bringing on board for employee engagement and things like that? And as at that time, quite a long time ago, as at that time, I was talking about focus groups. I was talking about knowledge sharing sessions. I was just talking about all those serious things. And the recruiter was just looking at me with one kind of side eyes that this guy does not even know what he's talking about. Like, we are saying we have this generation, and you are. So I'm not saying these things are just not. I'm not saying these things are out of the place, but this is a generation that would rather lean towards, trying to infuse a knowledge sharing session inside a TGIF. Thank God it's Friday, right? So, by all means possible, right? You are putting in learning into fun. I don't know if you get that perspective, right? It's still a knowledge sharing session, but you're having a fun aspect to it, right? So knowledge sharing session, beautiful, right? We do this from time to time. Focus groups, like I mentioned, beautiful. But then when the emphasis is removing fun, is removing digitization, we are not able to harness the best of these guys, right? So one other thing that we should bear in mind is the fact that this is a generation that would rather you are honest with them, right? So there is the clamor for transparency, right? As much as you go online, you see a lot of information, you see there is already a lot of information where we don't even know what is true or what is not true. So transparency, right? Transparency. What is the state of our policies? What are the things that we would agree to happen in these organizations? What are the things that are acceptable? What are the things that are not? Remember, I mentioned before that, oh, beautiful, let's have fun, let's joke around, but then we want to build a system where we have our value systems, right? We have our value systems that we are going to uphold. So a lot of times, these people come into the organization and there is no orientation and reorientation of what our brand ethos is, what our value system is, how that these are the things that are our do's and don'ts, so that we are having a balanced view of the spectrum. While you are saying these guys should have as much expression and experience that they should have, there is the need to ensure that you are having genuine interactions, right? We have a system, we have a culture where there is genuine interaction, there is transparency, right? And it is important that as HR people, there is this commitment. So again, today is Children's Day, right? And sometimes when we talk about the whole idea around children, beautiful to know that, yeah, we have kids at home, we have some persons who they look up to us and all that. But when we look at children, I want us to look at it from this perspective, right? Whoever you are able to pour out something into, whoever you are able to imbibe a value into, whoever you are able to give something, pass on something onto, is a child in that sense. So it's possible that you are 35 years old and you are dealing with somebody who is a 29-year-old, right? But for whatever reasons, you are the person's manager. You are training the person on specific things, right? And you leave that person with so much treasure that in the next 15 years, so imagine I said this person is a 35 years old. So 35 plus 15 should be 50, right? The person who was 29, by the time this person is 50, the person who was 29 should be 44, right? Even though this person is a 44-year-old man now, today, and he remembers how much that, how much value you have put in, the relationship is never the same. Even when you become 44 and 50 respectively, there's still this look forward as to there was a time in my life when I couldn't do this particular thing. This was the person who I attributed to. So it's very important that when we look at the younger generation, we come with that mindset. So as much as we want to blast and say, oh, Gen Zs, there are a whole lot of things that we want to be very, very particular about, we should also hold the older generation accountable to say, what is our investment in these guys, right? What is our investment in these guys? I mean, prior to now, I was fortunate while I was in my undergraduate. I was fortunate to be fellowship president at some point. So, I mean, at that point, perhaps I was in my early 20s, right? And while I was president to these guys, there were persons who were also in their early 20s. There were some persons who were slightly older than me. So, if I was 21, for instance, I probably had somebody who was 25. So at that point in time, I was leading him. But just so much. Your academics, this, how are you doing? How are you? And it is so interesting that, it's been almost 10 years since those periods, right? It's been almost 10 years. And when some of them still call me till date, there's just this talk of, okay, we don't relate as though we are probably age mates or they are older than me or stuff like that. They still remember, right? They still remember that at points like that, this person just poured something into me. So it's important that HRs, right, business leaders, we have this soft spot for this generation to say, okay, I'm going to be real with you, right? I'm going to be real with you. Work on your character. I'm going to be real with you, right? Work on your communication. Some persons, they want to say the best things, but they don't just know they don't know how to present. They don't know how to talk about it. So we are going to be real. So authenticity and transparency, right? Don't say they will feel bad. Don't say in this organization, I don't want people to feel bad, so I'm not going to, do these particular things. So just we should build models where we have this understanding that transparency, authenticity is key, right? So we want to reject things that are fake, right? We want to promote ethical behaviors, right? We want to ensure that as much as we are using social media and we are using other tools, we are also advocating for behaviors that are ethical. So how then do we build this brand? How do we build this brand? How do we create something that is compelling? How do we put our values and our focus and our culture, right? Sometimes in some organizations, when you go and then you ask people, what's the mission of this organization? What's the vision? Even the HR cannot say what the vision of the organization is, and it becomes difficult when I don't know the vision of my organization. I don't know the mission. Sometimes we can be doing a lot of things, and we think we are making progress, but we are very, very far away from the vision. We are very, very far away from the things that should guide the guiding principles that should guide our actions, right? So it's important that these things are defined and these things are clearly taught, right? Clearly taught. In fact, if there are two key things I would re-emphasize for this generation, it would be the fact that we are doing everything possible to ensure their development. We are doing everything possible to train them, right? To mentor them. So remember I mentioned initially that training and mentorship is something that we must imbibe. It is important to know that sometimes these people are not even clear on what they want to do, right? You meet a random 23-year-old sometimes. Sometimes they want to be social media people. Sometimes they want to do HR. Sometimes they want to do customer service. And there is no clear path, right? There's no clear path. As long as we see that these persons are on track, right? There has to be, okay, just sit down. Let me tell you what I think you should do, right? So these things should not be things that we just do just anyhow. It should start from the place of, first of all, even in this organization, do you know what the mission is? Do you know what the vision is? How can we now begin to tailor your experience? So if at the end of the day, in 5 years' time, right, you find somebody who wants to become a chartered accountant, but you are very, very big on financial reporting in your organization, how can that person become probably the best person at financial reporting? And you're also seeing that, again, while the person is probably taking a course in taking ICANN or doing one or two things, you are asking them, okay, you are doing financial reporting at work. I hope what's your financial reporting like? You understand? When you have a knowledge of the course content, right? Somebody's preparing for ICANN. You know that one of the courses the person is probably taking is financial reporting. And you're like, you know what? I think that you should not just do this on the practical side of things. This should be a big ups for you, even as you write your exams. The person has a glue between my personal life and what I currently do at work. I've talked about core values, right? And then connecting the dots, ensuring that these values are tied to employee experience, right? Of course, social impact, right? So many of us, we do things in our organizations that end in our organization. Sometimes we do not have a functioning LinkedIn account. We do not have a functioning IG account in our organization, right? Some of these places where people can just look up and they see some things that we have done before. Remember, I said when we were having this conversation, while I was laying a foundation, that trends are things that are very, very important, right? You see, I see in quotes, SMEs. Sometimes when I go on TikTok, funnily, my favorite social media is actually TikTok. It sounds weird, but as you like Instagram and some other places. I like TikTok because I just see a lot of videos there. Some of them, just appeal to different things. But when you come there, you see some SMEs, right? Some people in logistics, they're having a sort of idea in their head, one trend where somebody is just transitioning. I wish I had a lot of, maybe Gen Zs and millennials here. I don't know. Can anybody relate to transition? When you see a transition video, right? Something happened. And I believe I should see at least one person that should have seen a transition video before. And if you are that person, please tell us you have seen a transition video in the chat box. I hope to see at least one, right? Where somebody is making a transition video, something is happening, and then it's transitioning to something else. So you see somebody who is very, very big on social media, and they just go on any of these social media platforms, and then they've seen the track record, right? They've seen how you've talked about this, you have jumped on a trend. Thank you very much. Trying to look at the chat box. I see that somebody is talking about that. Okay, so you've seen that somebody is jumping on a trend, an organization is working with something that has trended at any point in time. It just tells you that these guys are not boring people, right? We favor the guys, we favor the ladies, we favor those who are tall, who are short, people who are from different races, and we just have a positive. We have a positive work environment, right? So it's important that whatsoever you are having as excellence within your organization, have a social media part of that, right? If you have a social media team that is doing amazingly well, beautiful. If you have one that is probably sleeping, there is the need for social impact, right? The need for social impact. Today is Children's Day. What's the vibe around Children's Day in your organization? Did we just resume to work and work was just every day as usual, right? Some other times it's going to be something else, something else. We should go online and we are seeing what the organization is doing there. It will not be the duty of the CEO most of the time. Sometimes most of the C-suites, they are busy on strategies and all. This is for HR to lead, right? This is for HR to lead. So as much as we talk about the purpose and values, social impact, don't say your organization has no business with social media. Don't say Instagram or any of those places, they are averse to you, right? We also see that, again, compensation, right? We've said this several times when we've had trainings around compensation and benefits and all. You want to see that you are not off what the going rate is. Very, very important, right? What is your compensation? What are the perks? What are the different things that you are attaching to your salary, right? I've worked in places before where it looks like after you are paid the salary at the end of the month, they are doing you a favor, right? Once you just take that your salary, if it's let's use 250,000. Once you see that 250,000 at the month like this, man, you should be worshiping and kneeling and praying and thank God, And sometimes while I was HR, when I go and I say there are so many things we can do, you hear the narratives like, I don't owe salaries. The fact that I even pay the salaries and I pay it on time, these kind of conversations might not be very, very interesting, right, to this generation, right? So we want to see that there are certain perks, there are certain benefits. Some of us, we have entered arguments where some persons are beginning to argue, HMO, for instance, should we really be celebrating HMO and pension amongst, when we write our JDs and our job adverts and all that. And one of the very big benefits we see sometimes on some ads is the fact that there's HMO and pension. Some persons will argue that, pension, for instance, is statutory. And so if that is the greatest luring factor for one of the best guys who has worked in 3-4 other places where they've been paid pension, it becomes difficult to bring the person in, right? So you want to visit your compensation. One of my friends reached out about 2 or 3 weeks ago to say, you know what, I work in insurance. how can we put our compensation? How can we just make things and see that we are not off the page? And I asked the person, you are part of HR mentorship. Why not, put a Google form together, right? Put a Google form together. And, by the time you post it on your group, you probably have about 500, 600, 700 persons. If 10 persons should respond to you, you should get some data to work with. So compensation, I think this is probably, if not the most important factor within this discussion, right? Compensation. I don't want to be very, very critical with figures, but there are some figures that are just not healthy, right? People will take the jobs because they want to do the job before the next best offer comes. And once the next best offer comes, they will not, the way some of these people live. I don't know if agency has broken your heart before as HR, when they just, in fact, let me tell you one experience I've had. I've had one that did not drop resignation letter, did not do anything. We just got to work on one Monday. The person did not show up at work. We called, that was just the end. That was just the end. So you can see, if you've had such experiences before, I'm sure you can relate, right? Compensation should be something that we need to review. I've been in this compensation discussion with quite a lot of persons in the last week or last 2 weeks, and it is something that in 2025 we need to discuss with management, right? Professional development. When you have a young person, and please, I'm trying to, I've said this before, the conversation is really not, I'm not tying this to age per se. When you see a younger person join your organization, you want to be very, very interested in the person's professional development. And I'm saying this because my story within human resources has not been the very, very smooth, got out of school, blah, blah, blah. I did economics, for instance, and while I was in school, guys from different places will come and they will make us feel like if you do economics and you are not in finance, you are probably failed in life, right? And that was the mindset I got out of school. And most of my friends, for those of us that have that economics background, you know that you probably be thinking finance and accounting most cases. And when I even got out of NYSC, I was just following that trend that, you know what, accounting is the way for me, accounting is the way for me. And, got my first job, I stayed doing ICANN, wrote ICANN till the second to the last stage of ICANN. I think that's skills, right? And it was just at that point I discovered that, no, bro, you're not going to be an accountant. And I like to tell these stories because that was a point of confusion in my heart. And I am very, very grateful for mentorship, right? The discussions, speaking to this person, speaking to that person, getting into HR mentorship, just understanding that, you can do well here. So sometimes there's that level of investment that we need to bring to this guy. So you telling people before they come into your organization that, you know what, by the time you come here, you will have professional development. Professional development is very different from salaries, right? I've had organizations where when people come into the organization, they'll tell you, you know what, go and sit for a professional exam, right? Register for it, pay for it. By the time you finish, just give us all your invoices and receipts. We'll give you back all the money, right? Or we'll give you a part of it, or we'll pay for your induction. CIPM induction was a couple of days, and then you see that these guys are boosted. I know there is the factor of they can leave and all that, but we know that cliche of if you don't invest or if you don't train, in this case training, right? If you say you train and invest in them and they leave, what about if you do not train them? You don't put these things into them and they stay. You are just going to have some, lazy guys who are not motivated, who are just selfish about their own ambition. So professional development is very, very key. Do you have HR persons who are within your team? How are you following up on them to get chartered? Accountants, customer service guys, what professional course have they done? Even the courses that they've done, how is the organization meeting them halfway? We are not saying if you are able to pay for, their exams and all those things, beautiful. If you are not able to do that, how are you meeting them halfway, right? Recognizing rewards and achievements, very, very, very important, right? As much as again, I like to take this story from Dr. Adeosun, right, about lateness, right? As much as you want to reprimand and you want to do a whole lot of things to people who are coming late to work, right? How are you rewarding? How are you recognizing those who are coming early, right? Don't forget the carrot and the stick approach, right? Stick as in when people are doing terrible, right? Carrot as in how are we recognizing, how are we telling people that they are doing well? And of course, work-life balance, right? Work-life balance, the fact that you are just interested. So all these things that you can see here, right? If your organization practices some of them, beautiful. If it practices all of them, beautiful. If it practices probably one or none of them, right? It is just not nice. It is just not nice. So even if you look at the last line, providing opportunities for growth, there's going to, don't forget the beginning of that our conversation, EVP, right? What is the value proposition? And there's going to be that question of if somebody should stay here for 3 years or 5 years, what is the need for the person? So I like us to take note of these slides to see, right, that okay, I'm sending out a job ad and somebody is coming to my organization, right? Somebody is coming to my organization. What are the things that I can put out, right? Is the work environment here positive, right? Is it positive? Let me share a personal things, right, in the workplace. There was one time we had a massive project, right? We were working on the project and we had to reach out to some candidates, right? We had to just do a whole lot of things. And because I currently work in consulting, when we do things to maybe clients and candidates and all that, we work with people in their thousands. Sometimes we can be handling a recruitment and then we are managing 3,000 candidates, 1,000 candidates, 500 candidates, and all that. And sometimes things around data management, you just have to be careful. That's like the point, right? We've handled the recruitment process before where somebody who knows, one of the major stakeholders there was part of the persons who applied. And if you mess up a process, they would report you to somebody and they would ask you, what are you doing? You don't know what you're talking about, right? So I made a mistake. I made a mistake that in resolving that mistake, it would take us another 2 to 3 days of work, active working, right? And I found my boss not just telling me, right, to go and resolve that problem, but we stayed up at night, right? We stayed up at night to solve the problem together. So it was a different scenario. And I cannot put into words the mental effect that that had on me at that point in time, right? And we can relate when a staff messes up and they probably have to fix that thing, right? So you have a CEO or an MD or somebody who is saying, man, you did not do right, but let's find a way to fix it. And then while I worked on it, I sent it back. Does this look good? And then he reviews and all that. We did that till about 11. We did that till about 12. We did that till about 1. He was still up. I was still up. We made sure we sorted the issue and everything went. That is a scenario. It could have gone the other way around. I could have answered those questions myself, right? I could have fixed it myself. I could have done that for another 3 days. It just shows that there is a commitment, right? There's a commitment. So I don't know if I can call this the most important slide of the conversation, but when we talk about value proposition, we talk about things, don't forget that these strategies are not just for those who are outside the organization, they are also for those who are inside the organization, right? The work environment, is it positive? I can call this positive, right? I can call what I just explained positive, but is it positive? Is there any element of toxicity that you want to take out of the way? Right? What is your compensation and benefits like? Right? For those of us who, by the grace of God, we are either attended compensation and benefits classes and all that, you know that ideally you should have pay structures, pay grids, right? If an intern should come into your organization, right? After becoming an intern, say the person becomes a graduate trainee, right? After being a graduate trainee, oh, the person becomes an officer. What is the person earning, right? Maybe if the person is going to be an associate or whatsoever, right? What is the person earning, right? And if the person stays a little bit longer, right? What is the person going to earn as a manager, right? If the person says, oh, I want to be more than a manager, I want to become a senior manager or whatsoever, how can the person, what is the growth pattern, right? What is the growth pattern? For those of us that were very familiar with the academics, right? That's why some persons, when they find out that their path is academics and they probably become doctors and professors, it is very, very defined, right? It's very, very defined. Somebody comes in as, say, lecturer 2, he knows what his salary is. He probably has his MSc or something, or maybe a PhD or so. They know that after 3 years, right, they become a lecturer 1. After that, what comes on? Senior lecturer, this. And if they are patient enough, they are within the system and they are professors at the end of the day. So it is just so important that we have all of these elements in one place or somehow within our conversation, right? Again, in 2025 and beyond, we have virtual reality, we have AI, people are doing crazy things with AI at the moment. How that, you can build a lot of things, you can build models, you can build frameworks. There's just a lot of investment in AI, and people are thrilled, right? These things are very, very thrilling to the younger workforce, right? So, recruitment processes, investing in tools, making people understand that we have platforms that can help you stay ahead, right? So if you have somebody in your organization and they are discussing with guys in other places and they are saying, we are using these particular tools, right? In our organization, are we using things like that? Or are we using things that are similar, right? So these are things that we should tie together, right? As we note that those who are coming to join us should gain something, don't be like the scenario that I talked about where somebody felt that after paying salary, salary is oxygen. Maybe that worked in some generations, but we are in a generation where salary is literally not enough, right? As I bring things to a close, I like to also mention that there is the need for investment into wholeness, into well-being, right? Into well-being. Have a system where people are flourishing beyond the job, right? Beyond the job. Aside the generation that we are talking about, even ourselves, right? For those who are coming in, let there be that sense of, somebody comes in and then they flourish. Some persons, have you ever wondered meeting, say, a Gen Z who is also a last born, right? A Gen Z who is also a last born. I'm not going to talk about the gender here, but you know that sometimes there is that delicate nature, right? There's that delicate nature. They can be performing, excellently, but sometimes you need to be in a space where you just understand, and sometimes it can be called empathy, right? You just understand and you are within the confines of how the person thinks. I've had a situation whereby a particular copper, right, a particular copper was shouting raised her voice at a manager, right, raised her voice at the manager. At that point, she didn't care. I've seen some other persons who they come to the workplace and they just have mood swings and all that. How do we manage this? How do we put these things in place? So let me conclude very quickly, right? I'm going to conclude by saying that there is a lot of investment, whichever way you look at your strategy, right? There's a lot of investment. And I'm also here to re-emphasize the fact that people must not be children. They must not be 10 years old, maybe because today is Children's Day, but they must not be children before you would create things that favor them, before you invest in them, right? Don't forget this slide for those of us that will probably watch this video, or don't forget 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They might look very, very simple, but these things are within your strategies, right? You are able to sustain guys in. Don't forget that I mentioned that you can be actively pouring into your age mates, right? You can be actively pouring into somebody who is older than you, right? And for whatever reasons, people are just not at the same, I don't want to say the same level, right? You found some persons who they are 30-year-old managers, right? They are 27-year-old managers, right? Maybe 20. It was one general manager, and it was verifiable. She was a GM, right? She was a GM. She was already controlling some sort of portfolios at points like that. Uh, life can be very dicey. That you find maybe a 25-year-old that is who is leading somebody who is a 42-year-old, but for the sake of rank or whatsoever, that person is probably, and I'm very sure that some persons on this call, you've probably met some persons who they are telling you, for your age or your level, you are doing a lot, right? You are doing a lot already. So don't wait until you see a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old before you begin to create strategies that favor them. Sometimes the persons can be millennials, right? But by all means possible, let there be somebody who you are probably 40 years old. The person is, I've talked about these generations. I'm just concluding, right? So, a 40-year-old, but you find a 35-year-old guy in your organization that needs a focus, that needs a direction, that you should prune, right? That you should make his life better. A time will come when you become 60 years old and that person will become 55, right? Till thy kingdom come, that person will still see you as the person who brought a change around his or our life. So this is to ensure that strategies favor them. The organization is doing well, business is making a lot of money, but then these guys are, number one, they are doing well in their lives and they are having fun. Because if they are not having fun, if they feel like they are not doing well, they are going to leave the organization at the end of the day. It's not a weekend sort of webinar, so I don't have the intentions to drag us so long for the sake of those who are probably on the road just getting home. So I'm just going to conclude by saying that this workforce is the future of the workplace, right? Is the future of the workplace. And organizations must pay attention to this generation for their excellence, right? And the virality they bring on board. There's a lot of life, right? There's a lot of excitement. When they say HR, pose for camera, and you're saying, no, I'm preparing, get out. Or they are saying, smile for the camera, do a video, do a wink, do like this. There's one trend, raise your hand up. Sometimes just raise your hand up and all. Let people see. And don't forget social impact, right? So there's an expression of this online somewhere. Let people see that, man, this organization is doing well. They have a focus on, they are just alive, right? They are alive. There's a lot of vibes in place. And we are just not dull people, right? And I was very, very careful by saying, by all means, right, ensure that, they don't get bored, right? Apologies, BORED, right? And they are given the right conditions to thrive. They are given the right conditions to thrive. I think this is a very, very convenient place to put a halt to my discussion today on this amazing Tuesday evening. And I will end by saying Happy Children's Day to every one of us again. Thank you very much, Doctor. I think I would want to put a pause here. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Hello, Doctor. Hello, Doctor. I don't know. I don't know if Dr. Adeosun can hear me. Okay. I don't know. It might be a network. So usually, right? I would just want to open up, questions and answers and contributions, so that we have a little bit of a discussion. But then if he's able to unmute, I'm sure he would get into the conversation. Are we able to use the chat box, or are we able to ask questions? Doctor, can you hear us? Okay. Are we able to unmute, or if you can use the hand icon? Okay. Okay, so people can unmute now. I can see doctor's messages, right? People can unmute now. If you have a question or you have a contribution to this subject, you're able to unmute and let's have one or two comments. Thank you, Doctor. Let's have one or two comments. At least it's Children's Day. Do we have comments? Do we have contributions? Do we have questions? There was somebody who mentioned they are not able to unmute. We do not have contributions and questions. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Doctor is not able to speak at the moment. Thank you very much. I think we have a very good conclusion and we can call it a wrap for tonight. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you for joining, and I hope that we can have these strategies implemented. Thank you so much, Olusoji. Thank you, everyone, for our comments.